For today, I'll be doing Minnesota. So, first, I'll talk a little bit about the head coach, and then I'll talk some about the roster, and then I'll go through their schedule game by game and give you a predicted winner and loser for each game. So, head coach at PJ Fleck enters his eighth season as the head coach of Minnesota and 12th season as a head coach. Minnesota is his only Power Five head coaching job, but he was the head coach for 4 seasons at Western Michigan right before going to Minnesota. There, he was at 30 and 22, and at Minnesota, he is at 50 and 34. His overall record as a head coach is 80 and 56. So at Minnesota, he has gotten them 1 11 and 2 season in 2019, and then 2 seasons in a row of 9 and 4 in 2021 and 2022. But last year was a disappointment, only finishing 6 and 7. But Minnesota is not a good football program, so if you're consistently getting them to bowl games, you're doing a pretty good job. So he had the 35th ranked at recruiting class at Minnesota this year, and Minnesota returns 71% of their production, which is a lot. So starting on the offensive side, at quarterback, they were horrible last year, and they had one of the worst quarterbacks in the country. And that was the big reason why their offense was horrible, only averaging 20.7 points per game. And they ranked 123rd in passing, only averaging 143.4 yards passing per game. Now they bring in a transfer quarterback from the FCS level, but he was really good at the FCS level. He'll be the starting quarterback. His name is Max Brosmer. He had last year in 11 games 3,459 yards, completing 64% of his passes and throwing 29 touchdown passes, averaging 7.6 yards per throw. Now, of course, playing quarterback at the FCS level is much different than playing quarterback in the Power Four, but I do think he's an upgrade over who they had last year at quarterback. I couldn't imagine him being as bad. So at wide receiver, they do have Daniel Jackson coming back, who is one of the best receivers in the Big Ten. He had last season 831 on 59 catches and 8 touchdowns, averaging 14.1 a catch. But other than him, they don't really have any proven wide receivers, and they do need some help there because to have a strong receiver unit, you need several good receivers, not just one. And then at running back, they've got Darius Taylor coming back, who is a really good running back. I think he might be one of the best running backs in the country this year. He was a true freshman last season and only played in 6 games because of an injury, but in those 6 games had 799 on 138 carries, averaging 5.8 yards a carry and had 5 rushing touchdowns. And in 4 of those 6 games, he had over 100 rushing yards. And on the offensive line, they're in pretty good shape here. They've got 4 starters returning, including one of the best offensive linemen in the Big Ten, left tackle Ariante Ursary, who is a 2-year starter. And in the 2 seasons combined, has only allowed 4 sacks and 25 total pressures. And then on the defensive side, they were okay here last year. They weren't great. They gave up on average 25.2 points per game. And good news is they returned 9 starters on defense. So on the defensive line, 3 out of 4 starters return, including Danny Strigo, who had last season 51 tackles and 6 sacks and 8 total pressures and a forced fumble. And they have Jay Joyner, who wasn't even a starter last year, but played in every game and led them in pressures with 46 total pressures, and also led them in sacks with 7.5, and also added 18 tackles and 2 forced fumbles and a fumble recovery and a pass breakup. He'll be a starter this year on the defensive line. Could be one of the best in the Big Ten. And at linebacker, they've got everybody back. They've got Cody Lindenberg, who only played in 4 games last year because of an injury, but had a huge season in 2022, playing in every game. And in 17 games combined these past 2 seasons, he has 102 tackles and 2 pass breakups and a sack and a forced fumble. And then they've got Maverick Baranowski, who played in 10 games last year and had 52 tackles and 3 total pressures and a sack and 2 pass breakups. And then they've got Devin Williams, who had in 12 games last year 52 tackles and 6 total pressures and a sack and an interception and a forced fumble and fumble recovery. And then in the secondary, they're in pretty good shape here. They've got Justin Wally coming back at cornerback, who is one of the best corners in the Big Ten. He's a 2-year starter and has, in the 2 years combined, 84 tackles and 10 pass breakups and 4 interceptions and 2 forced fumbles and 2 fumble recoveries. And they have a transfer corner coming in from the FCS level. His name is Ethan Robinson. He was really good in the FCS. He'll be the other starting corner. He had last season 50 tackles and 10 pass breakups and 3 interceptions and a fumble recovery. And then at safety, both starting safeties return. They've got Jack Henderson coming back, who led them in tackles last season with 59 and had a sack and 2 interceptions and a pass breakup. And they've got Darius Green, who had in 11 games last year, 51 tackles and a pass breakup. And then in special teams, both the kicker and punter return. And they've got the best kicker in the Big Ten Conference coming back, Dragon Kessick, who made 5 of 6 field goals from the 40 to 49 yard range last year and made 3 of 4 from 50 plus last year. And now moving on to the predictions, they start the year at home against North Carolina on a Thursday. So I think this will be a close game. And North Carolina, I think, is going to be a solid team this year. But I have a feeling that playing at home, Minnesota is going to win this one. But this is one that they're probably not going to be expected to win. And then they play Rhode Island, an FCS team. This will be an easy win. And then they play Nevada, a group of 5 team that's not any good. This should be another pretty easy win. And then they start their conference schedule against Iowa at home. So Iowa's got a better defense than Minnesota does. Their defense, I think, will shut down Minnesota's offense to where they won't hardly score anything in this game. But Iowa's offense is going to get shut down by everybody because they don't have any offense. So I think that this will be a very low scoring game. But I do think that playing at home, Minnesota has enough offense to win a really close game. Uh, this will probably be like a 13-10 type of game. And then they play on the road at Michigan. So both of these teams are going to want to run the football a whole bunch in this game and use up a bunch of clock. And Michigan's also got a really good running back, Donovan Edwards, that I think is going to have a huge year this year. And I think he'll have more success running the football in this game than Darius Taylor will for Minnesota, because Michigan, I think, will control the line of scrimmage in this game. And I think that Minnesota will probably be good enough to compete with Michigan now. This will be a fairly low scoring game, I think. But I do think Michigan's too good and will end up winning this one by a couple of touchdowns. Probably like a 27 to 13 type of game. And then they play USC at home. So I talked about this already in the USC video that I think that USC will have trouble stopping Minnesota's run game, uh, but I do think that USC's offense is going to be to where Minnesota can't hardly stop them. Their offense is going to be really good, and even though I do think Minnesota will score some points in this game, USC's offense is going to be too much, and USC, I think, will end up winning this one by around 2 touchdowns. But I do think Minnesota will keep it close for most of the game. And then they play on the road at UCLA, a team that's pretty similar with Minnesota, actually. And I'm going to take UCLA playing at home to get a really close win. Uh, they've got quite a bit of talent still on both sides of the ball, but of course, coaching is a big question for them this year, and they do lose a lot of players. UCLA does. So then they take a week off and then play Maryland at home, a team that I think is going to be terrible now this year. I think Minnesota will dominate them at the line of scrimmage and win this game. I do think Minnesota's a little better, and plus they're playing at home. But I do think this will probably be a pretty close game. And then they play on the road at Illinois, another team that I don't think is going to be very good. Their quarterback has experience in the Power Five, but not good experience. He's been bad, and Minnesota has a much better run game, I think, than Illinois does, and I think they've got a better offensive line. Illinois has more options, I think, at wide receiver than Minnesota does, but I think Minnesota's defense is better than Illinois is, and I think this will be pretty close. But I think even on the road, Minnesota gets this win. So then they play on the road at Rutgers. So both teams are pretty similar in my opinion. Rutgers' offense, I don't think is going to be any good. Minnesota's probably got a little bit more offense than Rutgers does, but Rutgers' defense has about the same amount of experience coming back as Minnesota's does, and theirs was better than Minnesota's last year. Rutgers had a pretty good defense, and I'm gonna go with Rutgers to win this game because of home field advantage for them in a pretty close one though, and I just think it is going to be hard for Minnesota to win two road games in a row against teams that are not good but aren't that much different from them. So then they take a week off and play Penn State at home. Penn State isn't going to be elite. Minnesota may be able to compete in this one, but I think that Penn State's talent is going to be too much, and uh, Minnesota will get worn out from that, and Penn State will end up winning this one by around 2 touchdowns. And then they end the year on the road at Wisconsin. Now, Minnesota's offensive line, I think, is better than Wisconsin's defensive line, and I think they'll have success running the football in this game with Darius Taylor. Uh, and Wisconsin's defense, though, the rest of it is going to be really good. And Wisconsin, I think, has a little more offense than Minnesota does. So I do think this game will be pretty close, but I'm going with Wisconsin. So my final prediction for Minnesota is 6-6 overall and 3-6 in the conference. So this will get them to a bowl game for sure. And I think it's possible they could go 7-5 or even maybe 8-4, but that would probably be their ceiling. And I also think it's possible that they could miss out on a bowl game because they could easily lose to North Carolina or Iowa or even Illinois. But that will be it with this video, and please subscribe and thanks for watching.